As you may know, Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clarke opened Jamaica's 2024-2025 budget debate today, this afternoon. It wrapped up shortly after 6, and the government plans to spend 1.3 trillion Jamaican dollars this financial year. So it's our biggest budget ever. And joining me now to discuss some key highlights, we have public affairs analyst Kevin O'Brien Chang, and joining us shortly is going to be Dennis Chung, who is a financial analyst. But we start off with Kevin. Hi. Kevin, can you hear me? I don't know if Kevin is frozen. Is Kevin hearing me? Is everybody hearing me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Hi, how are you?
There we go.
Hi, Kalilah.
All right. I think there is a delay or maybe an internet connection. You look a bit clearer now. So
yeah,
we start out now. We're good now? Are we good now?
Yeah.
All right, good. So quite a few highlights. I know everybody always looks forward to the revenue measures at the end. And for the 7th consecutive year, we have no new taxes. But what really stood out for you, Kevin?
The balance. To me, it's a master class on balancing short-term and long-term political goodies and fiscal responsibility, and the tax books and the people's lives. To me, the highlight wasn't so much a measure, but it's how he went through that tax threshold. At one point, 2.25 it will cost this much, 2.5 cost this much, 3 million. It left me with the feeling that this man has gone through all the numbers carefully. My country is in good hands. I really don't have to worry about the financial part. He has it under control. And his mastery of the numbers left me thinking, it's hard to believe we've ever had a better finance minister. He just gives me confidence that he is on top of the issues, has it under control. He's not going to do anything crazy, but he's still going to try and let people feel the benefits. So I listened and felt very reassured.
I guess for you who approaches it from the social side and the political side, you would look at it like that. For me as a journalist, I felt like he was taking me on a hill and gully ride before he got to what the actual announcement was. But yes, it was necessary for him to present the numbers. And I just want to play this clip. So Kristen, cue up the first clip for us on what that actual announcement was regarding the income tax threshold.
We're not able to deliver the large increase in the threshold in one go for the reasons mentioned earlier. But, Madam Speaker, that doesn't mean that we can't do it little by little. Little by little. Like little by little. Because it's an expensive thing. Right? And it's not little either. So, what do you say about that? Right? Step by step. What do you say about that? Right? Step by step. Step by step, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, in the context of everything else that we have announced, Madam Speaker, I'm announcing that effective April 2024, the income tax threshold on personal income tax will move from $1.5 million to $1.7 million, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this will cost approximately $9 billion.
Right, so $9 billion is what it will cost. And man, but before we even get to the the $9 billion, and some people are already asking in the comments, how are they going to pay for it? I said, is Dennis on? I said, Dennis is backstage. I don't know if he's ready.
I'm here, but the lighting not so good. I'm in the car, so I'll soon get to some good lighting.
All right, I'll give you a little bit more time. So like you were making the point, Kevin, he did some math. He gave us some numbers, because this is one thing that people have been looking forward to ever since even 2016. And when they came into office, they made that promise. They delivered on that promise to raise the income tax threshold to $1.5 million. But they also said that they eventually want to basically abolish personal income tax. And so ever since then, we've been looking for signs and looking for signals and looking for them to do even more than what they did with the 1.5. And here we are today with 1.7. And what does this mean for you as a viewer, you as a Jamaican, you as a taxpayer in Jamaica? It means that it's more money for you in your pocket. The government is going to be taking less out of your income when you pay your taxes, your personal income tax. And that's the one that comes out before it even hits your bank account. That's the one that your employer takes out at source and gives to the tax office. You don't even get to sit out money. You are going to get more. I haven't had time to calculate the numbers and say exactly how much it is going to give back to you. But as you know, I will be working on that. So the next thing, I think, Kevin, was also, you mentioned how he told us the various layers, the various levels that we have to get through. If it was raised to 2.1 million, it would have cost the country $26 billion. If it was raised to 2.5 million, it would have cost $34.6 billion. And if that threshold was raised to 3 million, which some people were calling for, it would have cost the country $45 billion. And so he gave us all the reasons why we couldn't do it. And then he made this announcement that is going to affect.
But he also made the point,
pensioners.
70% of people are below the threshold already. So even that 1.5 and up is only affecting 30%.
Exactly. And then he made the point that this is going to also affect pensioners, and they put something special in place for the pensioners. So let's play that clip.
55 years of age receiving a pension from an approved statutory pension scheme or an approved superannuation scheme are entitled to a tax exemption of $80,000 restricted to the pension income only. If the pensioner is 55 years and over, the $80,000 tax exemption can also be applied to the other sources of income. This is known as a pension exemption. It is proposed that the annual pension exemption and the age relief exemption be both increased from $80,000 to $250,000. The pensioner aged 65 years and over will now enjoy a total income tax threshold of the as of now, 1.5 million plus the 250,000 plus the 250,000, Madam Speaker, for a total income tax threshold of $2,176, Madam Speaker. And age 55 and over will be $1,750,000. The estimated revenue loss associated with this increase in the pension exemption is $1 billion, Madam Speaker, and the measures to take effect in the first quarter of fiscal year 24-25.
So I think Dennis is ready now. Dennis, you're good now?
The light is still not good, but I can talk.
All right, yeah, we just have to work with it at this point. What was the highlights of the budget presentation for you?
The highlight for me was the approach. About the nugget
Dennis, you're breaking up. You're breaking up badly, so you're going to have to find a spot with...
Yeah, you hear me now?
Try again, let's see. No, breaking up too badly. You're going to have to find a spot with better internet. But Dennis is agreeing with you, Kevin, the approach of how the budget was presented. So not just saying, we're giving you this, we're giving you that, but taking us through the journey of the considerations that the government has to make in order to arrive at their decisions.
Yeah, well, people forget the numbers, but what you want from a finance minister above all is a sense of reassurance that, hey, he understands what he's doing. But not everybody understands numbers, and we've had finance ministers who are pretty shaky on numbers. So as I said, you might forget the details, but the feeling of the reassurance, the confidence that, you know, Jamaica's on the right track, in the right hands. I think that's what a lot of people will take away from this. The feeling of confidence that he gives you, that, you know, hey, the man just knows what he's doing. And there was a time, you know, in Jamaica, you heard the budget, you're worried, are they getting this right? How about that? The taxes, all that. Are we going down the, you know, going down the toilet a couple of times? You heard budgets. Not anymore. Since, well, this administration, and especially since Mr. Clarke, Dr. Clarke came along, I personally don't worry. I listen to him. I mean, not disagree with everything he's saying, but I do know he has gone through all the pros and cons, and that what he has put on the table is the best that he has come up with. And I don't think there's any finance minister I've ever heard who I know had the mastery of the numbers, went through the figures back and forth, and come up with the best possible deal for Jamaica in the long run. That's how I see it. The other takeaway that came, the goodiest part, was the tax credit. Because while the threshold thing only applies to 30% of Jamaicans, the tax credit, everybody under 3 million, that's a huge chunk. A bigger chunk, I think, and it's a little bit, everybody getting $20,000. It may not be much, but it's something. So people can ask it, the government never done nothing for me yet.
So we're going to have to explain
for taxpayers.
We're going to have to explain how this tax credit works. We have the clip. Let's run the clip, and then Kevin, or if Dennis is ready at that time, we can explain how this tax credit is going to work.
Under $3 million and under. The reverse tax credit, Madam Speaker, means that every registered taxpayer, Madam Speaker, who in the completed fiscal year did their part of contributing to society, whether through PAYE or being self-employed, Madam Speaker, and who earn under that threshold, Madam Speaker, this government, Madam Speaker, will provide for them a reverse tax credit, Madam Speaker, a tax credit, cash credit of $20,000. Madam Speaker, we have a total of 570,000 Jamaicans today who contribute to the Jamaican society through statutory deductions, and some through personal income tax, who will benefit from this measure. Madam Speaker, the cost of this program is $11.4 billion, and we consider this money very well spent. Reverse tax credits, Madam Speaker, are not new. They exist in other countries. It never existed before in Jamaica, but we are going to put it in place. Now, Madam Speaker, there's going to be an established system for the processing and payment of the reverse tax credit to be managed by the Tax Administration Jamaica. This will take some time to set up before it's ready.
All right, I think Dennis is in better position now. All right, good.
Yeah.
So Dennis, what is this reverse tax credit? What is he talking about?
Basically, it was just a credit that's given back to persons who have been paying their tax. So, you know, it's somewhat like you pay money in, and they're saying, okay, this is a tax credit that you'll get back. You know, you pay $100 and you get $20 back. So it's really just a credit.
He said cash credit. So are we going to get cash money in our hands?
Well, when you talk about cash nowadays, you just talk about liquidity, not necessarily money in your hands. But it's really maybe just a cash credit could be a credit against the income tax that you're paying. You know, so I think that's how it's going to work.
That's what I thought. That's what I assumed when he said tax credit. That is just basically deducted from your liability.
Well, I mean, as a politician, when you say cash, it sounds better, eh? So maybe that's why I use the term.
When it's a cash credit, it sounds like you're gonna be getting some money in your hand.
Yeah, but I think it's just a tax credit.
Okay.
Money you never had before.
Yeah, yeah.
1,000 more
Yeah.
this month than I had last month.
It's money that you don't have to pay over. So technically,
Right.
it is money back to you, just that it's not
Right, right,
physically in your hand.
right,
All right.
right.
So
That affects everybody under 3 million, while the threshold only affects 30%. This probably affects 90% of taxpayers.
Yeah.
Everybody gets a little thing, and I guess that's to counter them not doing nothing for me. Hey, as long as you're paying taxes, of course, the ones who are outside the tax system, they don't benefit. How do you get any goodies to them? That's a good question.
So I have a few comments on it. Strong Link says the reverse tax credit is another 20,000 for lower paid people. 3 million is not that low. Yippee says a tax credit is a deductible against your income tax payable. So I say Angela
Yep.
Brownberg, they cut to her. She didn't look very impressed with the 20,000. Who am I says income earned credit, confusing. And then we have a few other people. Levar says, I don't accept that explanation. What if you're no longer working in the Jamaican system? However, you contributed for the physical years being mentioned. If you're not paying income tax now, then
You're not going to get it.
yeah. But if you're older and
Yeah.
you're a pensioner, then you benefit in a different way from the pension exemption, the increase in the pension exemption that he mentioned.
Yeah, you'll benefit there. You'll benefit there. But you know what? One of the things that we have to understand, is that where we're coming from, where we used to have taxes put on us every year. If you take a snapshot of the period he spoke about, 1989 to 2015, and look at what has happened over the past 6 years, if you don't look at it, sort of gradually, but that period to this period is a significantly different time, I know Kevin is old enough to remember when every year when the budget was being read, you used to bite your fingernails and wonder what is coming next in terms of tax.
Party tax.
Yeah. Yeah. And what it is that you're moving from a situation where the economy was being inflated every year by inflation and taxes to one now where when you can have a situation where taxes are being given back and there are no new taxes, it means that for the economy to grow, it is real production that is happening that's causing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the difference that we have to understand. So when you look at this budget, the philosophy around the budget is all about removing the impediments to productivity, right? People are not going to see the underground policies that they want coming out of this, because that's not what the finance minister's presentation is. It's going to be in the sectoral presentations. But this one is saying, hey, this is the balancing act that we can play. This is what we can afford to give back. These are the fiscal policies that we're going to put in place to remove those impediments and fund the things that are going to drive productivity. That's how we need to look at this budget that was presented.
It's so funny because I heard him during the earlier part of the presentation making some points, and I immediately thought of you, Dennis, because I know Dennis is always on the productivity point. Those changes to the procurement system that are going to make it easier to do business with the government, make it easier for you to get paid by the government. Tell us some of the highlights there, Dennis.
Oh, that one is significant. I mean, I've been involved in the public sector for a while, and I can tell you, I mean, let's just look at the whole thing of garbage trucks. We know that we have a garbage problem, and if we don't get garbage trucks in the system, garbage will not be collected, and it will cause health problem and all of that. But guess what? The emergency procedure takes 9 months to get them in, right? And so therefore, when he speaks about raising...
Emergency takes 9 months.
The emergency
that takes 9 months.
Right? So when he speaks when he speaks about increasing the threshold, you're freeing up thousands of transactions that is going to drive productivity, right? Because it's going to drive business transactions. It's going to drive business to all sorts of commercial enterprises. It's going to make the government a lot more efficient, right? It's going to remove the red tape. So That is how you increase productivity. There are some other things that we need to do. And he spoke about, the funding of getting transportation system in place and all of that. We spend over $200 billion a year of productive time in traffic, right? So what his presentation has done is say, listen, I am going to clear the impediments where I can from a legislative point of view, but I'm going to put the funding where I think it will drive productivity. So that was a concept of this whole budget and why I like it, because it has a philosophy of it, of removing the little things, the little things that are causing a stumbling block, removing them out of the way so that people can be more productive. And that is how we're going to really see sustainable growth in the country.
Yeah, I thought that one was pretty significant as well. One of our viewers has this comment, who am I? Says, importation of cheap, fresh vegetables, a sore eye on the budget presentation. Small farmers are crying now. I noticed the minister's body language while he was making that portion of the presentation. It seemed like it was something he didn't really want to do. We have the clip, let's play it.
Jamaica is also obligated under the conditions of the obligated to the conditions set out by virtue of our membership in the WTO, and based on the national treatment principles set out in the General Agreement on Trade and Tariff, GATT, Jamaica is categorically, and I say categorically, not permitted to implement policies or measures that are designed to protect domestic products. We have ASD, we can use those mechanisms, but using domestic taxation like GCT is not allowed. And Jamaica, Madam Speaker, will be blacklisted if that duality remains. And so we have a choice. Either we do it on local or we take it off of foreign. Madam Speaker, in keeping with Jamaica's trade obligations, the GCT and all raw foodstuff, Madam Speaker, imported, Madam Speaker, or domestic will be removed. This is a measure, Madam Speaker, that will be revenue negative and will result in foregoing $2.4 billion of revenue.
Right. So no GCT on all raw food items. We're talking fruits, vegetables, meat products as well. I expect that there's going to be quite some reaction to that tomorrow, Kevin.
Well, that's the thing, but he said it was necessity. Either we're going to do it or get blacklisted. And this is going to require careful communication. And I'll say this about Nigel Clarke. In my view, I would have never had a better finance minister who understood the numbers as well as him. But he's not the greatest communicator to the common man. And this one will have to be communicated very well by the JLP, or the PNP will take advantage of it. They have to be clear. We had no choice. And the repercussions if we had done differently. It has to be communicated well. When they did the politician salary increases, Nigel was in charge of communicating that. He did a terrible job, in my view. So this one, the JLP better think through how we're going to communicate this so the PNP can't take political advantage of it. It's a necessity, but you got to show the people why you had to do it in the language they can understand.
Yeah. What do you make of that one, Dennis?
I agree with Kevin. This is one that, can hurt. But he said it's necessary. I believe that from the WTO point of view. Of course, I would love to see where we take measures to promote more local production. One of the things that I think we need to do, is look at, for example, how can we align our local products more into places like the tourism sector, right? So I think there are ways that we can do it, without violating the WTO, by giving an impetus to local production. And I think that the biggest thing we can do is how can we get our local products into the tourism sector, so we don't have to go through the bureaucracy of the export market or thing, things like that. But help our farmers get in there, right?
Right.
And I think that's the way to deal with it.
Right. And help our farmers become more competitive as well. That way,
Right.
the difference on having GCT or not having GCT won't be that great. And we're going to opt for the local products anyway, because the price difference isn't that significant that we have to go for the imported product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's what we need to do.
Strongly said. He implies that there are other measures that can be used to protect local farmers. So there's also that. All right, let's talk as well. So there was another announcement about the junior market, and this one has been up in the air for quite some time now, increasing the cap limit for the junior market of the stock exchange. 500 million, you can't exceed that, and now that is finally being increased to 750 million. Did he say April? I don't think he said when it becomes effective. Did he?
I think he said April. Yeah.
I don't recall. How significant is that, Dennis?
Oh, that one is good, because what it does is it encourages people, more and more people, to go on the stock exchange. And what that does is that, apart from giving the company the room to grow, it also expands the ownership base. So it's not just about giving the companies the opportunity and people the opportunity to grow, with the benefits. But importantly for me is expanding share ownership. And I think that's critical, because that's a way of getting the persons who don't have that amount of capital to get into the ownership of companies. And therefore, I think that one is very significant from that point of view.
I agree with you 100%, Dennis. Because once upon a time, it said that 21 families owned Jamaica, and if you weren't one of them, you couldn't get a piece of the pie. Now anybody can buy shares and you have a piece of the pie. So it certainly breaks down that historical stratification that Jamaica has always had, where a certain bunch of people at the top, they had access to all the capital. Now you buy shares, you are a capital owner. So it's very critical. And until we get most Jamaicans having a piece of the pie, you're not going to get the progress that we really want. So I fully agree, Dennis, there. It's critical to get more and more people getting owning stocks and having a piece of capital in Jamaica. Because that's what a stock is. I own a piece of the productivity of the country.
Let's come to the question now of how do we afford to do all the things that Minister Clarke mentioned? How do we afford to give back? I was tallying up some of the numbers, over $23 billion, including $9 billion from income tax. Yippee says, how will they recoup this $9 billion from the income tax threshold? And I'll add by extension over $20 billion from the other measures that they're giving back. Where is this money coming from, Dennis?
Well, he spoke about the securitization of debt, which basically is just taking a bunch of debt, putting it together and selling it off. So he's going to raise 25 billion from that, and that will cover it. But, more importantly for me is that what we are doing now in terms of giving back to people, and the minister did mention it, is as a result of the fact that we have reduced our debt to GDP. We have more fiscal space. We have grown the economy for 10 consecutive quarters straight. We've reduced unemployment to 4.2%. That really is how we are able to afford it. It's not really just the securitization of the debt, right? But the fact of the matter is that we have done what we needed to do to lay the foundation to build a solid financial base, which is what people and businesses need to do, right, first. And then when you have done all of that, you have the ability now to spend money in a discretionary way. And that is what we are doing now. And this is why we have to continue on the path we are on now, because we cannot afford to go back to 2013 or before that. We have to continue to ensure that we build our stocks more and more, not just give away money, right? And ensure that we can afford to spend the money on the things we want in the future. That's how it's done.
Explain
And
what you
the
mean by
critical thing too,
securitization of the debt. Is that just a fancy way of saying we're still borrowing more money?
No, what it means is that people owe you money out there, right? And you put it together and you sell it and you get money for it. So you're selling your future receivables.
Yes, I did hear him mentioning that. So receivables financing. Kevin, you wanted to add something there?
yeah, the one of the critical points of this budget, one of the impressive points of this budget to me was, while we hear about the goodies, the tax threshold, the pensioners, the infrastructure investment for new hospitals, well, Cornell Regional and 3 other big ones, the roads. So while they're giving people something, yeah, we're doing something, you know, the investment in infrastructure will benefit Jamaicans in the long run. That's infrastructure is one of the most critical things for increasing productivity and make people better off in the long run. And that was one of the impressive things, that you could see that balance, the thinking through of it, that yes, we're going to give you something to make you happy short term, but in the long term, every Jamaican's life is going to get better with the hospitals and the roads and the infrastructure improvements. That was also critical. Sometimes we tend to think of the headline, the tax threshold, but it is long-term things that will, in the long run, make us and our children and grandchildren better off.
Speaking of us and our grandchildren being better off, I have a comment here from Instagram. It's this Janet. Janet said, boy, I'm a gone, yeah, man, because this is a rich people program. I want to hear how this budget will benefit the regular Jamaica that's selling at Schoolgate and the handcart man. So what's in the budget for them?
Better hospitals to go to, better roads to drive on. I mean, those are things everybody feels.
Yeah, well, the truth is that, as I said, what the finance presentation does is set up the funding and the expenditure and clears the way in terms of some legislative hurdles that were causing issues. In terms of what people want to hear, they're going to hear it in the sectoral presentation.
And from the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister comes with those
right,
goodies, as we tend to call it.
Yeah, that is where you're going to hear the things that are affecting people's lives daily, like transportation, like crime, like those sorts of everyday issues, parochial roads, right? Those are the things that we're going to hear in the Prime Minister's presentation and the sectoral debate, which a lot of people don't listen to it, but that is where you find a lot of the gems in terms of understanding what is going to happen. For example, we just had a local government election. What is the Minister of Local Government going to say? How are we going to approach it differently, so that we improve the lives of people? That is where you're going to see it, not in this presentation.
So I see.
Also significant was the no more, this university students don't need a guarantor anymore.
Yeah.
And that they're going to get, how much is 600 of them going to get 60,000 or something?
Yeah.
But again, that thing affects, about talking about poor, rich people. Well, that's the biggest way to move people from poor to not poor is education. Right? That's the #1 way to get out of poverty for every poor people. And access of poor people to university, how can that not be a good thing? That's why I said the balance, people must look, and I'm knocking people, but you need to look not only at what I get in my hand now, what am I getting down the road, what are my children getting down the road. Think of those improvements and say, yeah, I can see where I'm going to be better off, or my children will be better off.
Well, we're definitely off to an interesting start. Any flaws that you can see, Dennis? Anything that you would criticize about the presentation?
Yeah, well, what I want people to understand is that the presentation is trying to clear the way for productivity changes and give back something. But as a country, we still have the fundamental issue of labor productivity. So I hear, for example, about the unemployment insurance coming, and that for me is a critical move, because it is the first step I've ever seen since 2013, when the IMF said it was necessary to labor market reform. But I haven't heard any further developments on that. So I expect that's going to come. For example, are we going to see less redundancy payments now? Right? What are we going to be talking about in terms of, you know, if someone is unemployed since they're going to get insurance? No. How much is it going to be? And does that mean that we clear the air from the legislative things we normally see with the IDT and that sort of thing, right? So the flaw for me would be that we didn't get enough detail, but I don't expect that we're going to get it now. I think it's going to be fleshed out later. So I didn't really have any great expectations for that coming. But, you know, we have to wait until we see what's coming out in the details to really make a judgment call on that.
Kevin, for you? Kevin frees up right when it's time to give the criticism.
Well, it could have been a little long, and some of the stuff he went into in detail, perhaps he could have not gone into so much detail. But for substance and thinking through and the approach, I really can't knock it. As I said, the amount of thinking that went into that thing, for me to stand outside and knock it out, I would feel ashamed. Because clearly a lot of work went into that budget. When you hear the details and analysis, I can't knock a man who worked so hard, clearly.
All right. Thank you very much, Kevin O'Brien-Chang, Dennis Chung. I appreciate you guys. I know, Dennis, you just ran from one interview to come to this one, so I really appreciate that.
All right, no problem. All right, Kevin, good.
Thanks. Take care, guys.